The year's almost over, and maybe it didn't turn out the way you pictured. You've carried so much this year: expectations, people, emotions you didn't even cause. You've tried to be understanding, forgiving, patient. But before 2025 ends, maybe it's time to let go of the habits that keep you emotionally tired. Most of us think growth is about learning more, but real growth is often about releasing what no longer fits. It's not about becoming better, it's about becoming lighter. Because not everything or everyone deserves to be carried into the next year with you. Letting go isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's what happens when you stop trying to explain every situation, every silence, every person who couldn't meet you halfway. So, before 2025 ends, I want you to think of this as your emotional detox. Three habits to leave behind, starting with the one that sounds compassionate but quietly keeps you stuck: the habit of explaining other people's behavior for them. Habit 1: explaining other people's behavior for them. Let's start with something almost everyone who's self aware has done. You make excuses for people who hurt you. You say they didn't mean it. They're just under pressure. They had a tough childhood. You turn pain into logic, so it feels easier to hold. I used to do this constantly. When someone crossed a line, I'd instantly defend them. To myself, I'd say, they're not usually like that, or I get why they reacted that way. And it made me feel compassionate, but really, I was just avoiding truth. This is what emotional intelligence looks like when it turns against you. You start using empathy as a shield. You explain people's behavior so thoroughly that you never have to confront what it's actually doing to you. It sounds kind, but it's really self protection. Because if you explain their behavior, you don't have to accept their choices. It's easier to call it trauma than to call it disrespect. Easier to label it confusion than to face that they just don't care enough. I once had a friend who only texted when they needed something. Every time I tell myself, they're busy, they don't mean to ignore me. But one day I realized I was the only one doing emotional math. They weren't thinking about balance. I was. When you explain someone else's behavior, you disconnect from your own. You forget that your feelings are data too. They tell you when something's off, when something hurts, when something's missing. That's not sensitivity. That's awareness trying to get your attention. A therapist once said to me, stop analyzing the person who hurt you and start analyzing why you keep explaining it away. That line changed everything. Because the moment you stop rewriting other people's stories, you can finally start editing your own. So, before 2025 ends, let this be your practice. When you catch yourself saying, they didn't mean it, ask, but did it still hurt? When you say, they had good intentions, ask, but did they take responsibility? Compassion is beautiful, but it can't replace accountability. Because empathy without limits turns into self abandonment. You can understand someone and still walk away. That's what emotional maturity really is. Not over explaining, just understanding and choosing peace. Next up, the habit that looks like preparation but is actually fear wearing a planner. Habit 2: mentally rehearsing worst case scenarios. This next habit hides under the label, I'm just being realistic. But what you call realism is often worry wearing a suit. You think you're preparing for every outcome, but you're really living through problems that haven't even happened yet. I used to lie awake rehearsing every possible disaster. What if the plan fails? What if they leave? What if I never catch up? I thought it made me careful, but it just made me tired. I wasn't building safety, I was building stress. The mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Stanford researchers found that imagining a threat triggers the same physical stress response as facing one. So each time you just think it through, your body goes to war with ghosts. You start confusing anxiety with wisdom. You think the most nervous voice in the room is the smartest one, but anxiety isn't intuition. It's your fear pretending to keep you safe. When you live in constant rehearsal, you never get to enjoy the scene you're actually in. You could be in a moment of peace and your brain whispers, "Don't relax. Something's coming." That's not caution, that's emotional theft. I once met someone who said, "Worrying is how I stay ahead." I told him, "No, worrying is how you stay exhausted. Preparation is doing something, anxiety is doing everything in your head and calling it strategy." Try this for a week. When your mind starts listing disasters, stop and ask, "Okay, but what if this goes right?" It sounds cheesy, but it breaks the mental pattern. The brain will fill silence with whatever story you feed it, so you might as well feed it hope. And when something does go wrong, because sometimes it will, you'll handle it better because you didn't spend all your energy living it in advance. Calm people aren't lucky, they're just less rehearsed. If you're still here, breathing a little slower, maybe take a second to subscribe before your brain starts predicting you'll forget later. Up next, the habit that everyone praises you for, but secretly drains you. The one that looks like strength, but quietly costs you connection. Habit 3, performing stability. This last one is tricky because people will praise you for it. You're the strong one, the steady one, the one who keeps it together when everyone else falls apart. But somewhere along the line, you stopped keeping it together and started performing it. You tell yourself, "If I stay calm, things will stay okay." You think that being strong means staying silent. You manage everyone's emotions while quietly ignoring your own. You don't cry because it might make someone uncomfortable. You don't vent because it might make you look dramatic. The truth is, no one even knows you're struggling because you trained them not to ask. You've convinced everyone that you're fine, and now they believe you. That's the real exhaustion. Not what you carry, but that you carry it alone. I remember someone once saying, "You handle everything so well." And I smiled, but I wanted to scream because what they saw as grace was actually numbness. I wasn't managing life, I was avoiding breakdown. Performing stability feels safe because it keeps you in control, but control is not peace. Peace is being able to tell the truth about how you feel and trusting that the world won't collapse when you do. You don't owe anyone the illusion of strength. The people who love you don't need you to be unbreakable, they just need you to be real. You can let them in. You can say, "I'm tired." You can say, "I'm scared." You can say nothing at all and still be enough. Psychologists call it emotional suppression, and it doesn't make you strong, it makes you disconnected. You can't bond through perfection. People connect through truth. So, if you've been faking, "I'm fine," this is your permission to stop. You don't have to hold it all together just to be loved. You can fall apart a little and still be worthy. In fact, that's where real connection starts, in the moments you finally let yourself be seen. Maybe this is what real strength looks like now. Not holding it in, but letting it out. Not by being okay, but being honest. Not performing peace, but allowing it to find you. Because next year doesn't need a stronger you, it just needs a truer one. So let's take a breath. You've made it through 3 habits that quietly shape how you move through life. Not the loud ones everyone warns you about, the quiet ones that steal your energy when no one's watching. First, the habit of explaining other people's behavior for them. You learn that compassion doesn't mean rewriting someone else's story. Understanding someone's pain is kind, but protecting your own peace is necessary. Then, the habit of rehearsing worst case scenarios. You realized you don't have to live the pain before it happens. Worry doesn't make you prepared, it just steals your present twice. And finally, performing stability. The habit of pretending you're fine when you're quietly falling apart. You don't have to hold the world together to deserve rest. You're allowed to be human, even in progress. Together, these habits have one thing in common. They all come from fear. Fear of losing people, fear of being unprepared, fear of falling apart. But what if peace doesn't come from control? What if it comes from release? You don't need to enter 2026 brand new. You just need to enter lighter. Growth isn't always about more. Sometimes it's simply about caring less. And if this video made you breathe a little deeper, smile a little softer, or think a little longer, maybe hit subscribe before 2025 ends so we can keep figuring life out together, one lesson at a time. Until next time, let go a little, live a lot, and remember, peace doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it just sits quietly beside you and waits for you to notice it.